This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rutter. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rutter. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it, and that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Jim Matuga on the show. He is the president and founder of InnerAction Media. He's also the author of a book called Marketing Matters and the host of a podcast called Positively West Virginia. So with all that being said, Jim, welcome to the show.
John, thanks for having me. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into media, and what is it that you do today?
Yeah, well, again, thank you. So I've been a storyteller all my life. I remember when I was 8 years old making interview tapes on cassette decks with a little microphone and interviewing my friends. And so I always loved telling a great story. When I got into college at West Virginia University, I graduated in 1988 with a degree in advertising and from the journalism school. And the idea was I wanted to set the world on fire. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to learn how to communicate marketing messages and advertising messages to connect people with brands, and that was my vision. So after I got out of college, that's what I started doing, and I worked in the media business. I worked in radio, newspaper, TV, cable, direct mail. I mean, you name it, I was in it. But most of my time was spent in the newspaper business. I spent about 16 years working for a newspaper, and I held all the different positions, from a sales rep to eventually becoming vice president of sales and marketing, basically having advertising, circulation, and marketing divisions under my belt. And so eventually what I wanted to do, and I love this, I have this passion for helping, especially small businesses, entrepreneurs, startups, and even nonprofits tell great marketing stories. And I kept, early on in my career, I said I wanted to own my own agency someday. And in 2011, I took the jump and created InnerAction Media. And so we're a marketing agency and a technology company, and we can talk about that as well from your audience perspective and in tech. And basically, the idea was I wanted to create an agency that was a little bit different. I didn't want to necessarily just, there's an axiom in certain agencies, shut up and take the money, just do what the client wants to do and get paid. But I wanted to, kind of shift that narrative of an agency and become not only a consultant, but really somebody who focuses on creating great marketing stories. Because I believe that's where it all lies. The ability to communicate, just about everybody can communicate well, but how do you connect with a customer? So the differentiation between communicating and connecting, and I found that through a story process, and again, the fundamentals of the story process are that the story is not about you, the business owner; it's about your customer and what you can do for them. And so that's what I built this agency, InnerAction, on, is really focusing on creating great marketing stories that connect with people. And we do that through video production, website development, through strategic campaigns, digital, traditional, social media, and ultimately, foundation of everything is on the strategy of telling great stories.
Mm-hmm. And you guys developed a product, Storymaker. How does that kind of integrate with telling those stories and using technology?
Yeah, John, I appreciate you asking that, because, I fell in love with this problem years ago. And that was the problem of when I ask somebody, what do? They cannot answer it. It's like, you hear the elevator pitch. I call it the 30-second pitch. What's your 30-second pitch? I ask everybody, and they don't know how to answer it. And I'm like, man, this sucks. People need to be able to articulate what they do. And so back in November of 2022, just as OpenAI was unleashing, Chat GPT to the world, I'd been looking to try to automate some processes that we have here at the agencies, things that, that we just do day in and day out that, man, if we could just use some software to do that, it would be great. But I couldn't find anything. And part of that was some of the storytelling and content creation, whether it's social media or email, blog posts, those kinds of things. Like, how can we automate this better, but still be authentic and true and useful, right, in the marketplace? And so I got a call from a person at West Virginia University saying, "Hey, we're going to do this new initiative in starting in January of 23, where we're going to try to stand up 10 SaaS applications in 10 weeks." And they said, "It's never been done that we know of, and we're going to try to do this. And we heard that you have this idea of, automating some processes. Would you be interested in being part of this cohort?" And I said, "Yeah." I kind of told them what I was wanting to do, like take generative AI and wrap it around my story process and create really effective marketing messages that people could use, like small businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits. And after the half-hour conversation, the guy was like, "Wow, Jim, I really want you in this cohort." I said, "Well, how do I apply?" He's like, "Well, you don't have to apply. You're in. I want you in." So that was kind of cool. And so that during that Christmas break, right before January of 23, I just on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, I mapped out like how this whole thing would work. I'm not a tech guy, okay, but I started a SaaS application, so it was kind of neat. And so, John, the fast forward to that, we created this SaaS application. About 6 weeks in, we had a minimally viable product, an MVP that we could actually test, and we were on a call. There was about 30 of us on a call, Zoom call. Some of the developers were in India. Here we are in West Virginia. And I was the first one to make it to an MVP. And all these people were on here and they're like, "All right, Jim, let's try this out and see if it works." And so I had the little prompt in there. I clicked make my story, and the little icon was spinning. And about 4 seconds later, it popped up my 30-second pitch for my company. And as I read it, I actually got chills because I was like, "This is incredible. I can't believe that I'm reading something that was specific about my business based on AI, generative AI, ChatGPT." And everybody on the computer, on the Zoom call, I should say, they were all stunned as well. They're like, "What just happened? This was like amazing," right? And so anyway, we fast forwarded it, fast tracked it. It had a team of developers build out StoryMaker and created a very beautiful user interface, and the UI is very seamless. It looks really beautiful. It's very intuitive. And now we have, we launched on May 1st, 2023. So not only did we, create the application in 10 weeks, but we had launched it to the world in May of 2023. And now we have subscribers all over the country, primarily in the US. That's where we've really marketed it. But it's so amazing that we're able to take something that, that I had created in my mind, built it out on like 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, right? And on my conference room. And now we have customers that we're helping all across the country. And that's pretty cool. And, we get great reviews from our people that are using it. As a little side note, and I think this is kind of cool thing too, the whole funding for that 10-week cohort was funded by a guy named John Chambers. And John Chambers, of course, was the former CEO of Cisco. And he is the namesake for our College of Business and Economics, the John Chambers College of Business and Economics at WVU. And so as a result of launching in the fall of last year, I got a chance to meet him in person and tell him, about our product and what we're doing. And it, kind of like I think it was probably against his best judgment. He agreed to mentor me through the process of getting this out to the market, and that was incredible. To be able to have somebody like that walking alongside. And he said something, John, that I thought was really cool and maybe of interest to your listeners too. And he'd asked me, like, what differentiates you from the other companies? Because when we launched in May, it was a lot different than 3 months after that. There was a lot of companies doing what we're doing, but we were one of the first. And I said, well, we're not a technology company. We're marketing, we're marketing people that do this every day, and we created an application that has our customers in mind. Like, they're small business owners. We didn't just create this to make sales. We actually want to help people. And he said, well, he goes, I like that. He goes, but I will tell you, he goes, you need to stop saying you're not a tech company. Every company needs to be a tech company. I don't care if you're a mechanic, you need to be thinking of yourself as a technology company. And so now I say we're a marketing and technology company. And because we utilize StoryMaker every day for every one of our clients. And I just think that's really kind of a cool way of looking at it. No matter what business you're in, you're a tech company. You need to be thinking that way.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think every company, we live in a day where technology drives the business. We're no longer a call center. We're no longer just a expense that people have to have. We should be driving innovation and driving, the market. And that's one of the things that, hopefully the listeners have learned a little bit on the show from listening to me, is that, as a leader in technology, you're no longer just an order taker. You've got to be, putting strategy forth to drive the business forward. And it's really important in media. You talked about your career in media, and, you look at all the changes from newspapers where it was print to, do newspapers even print these days, or is it all just media based? It's all online. It's all digital. It's all social media. And, staying ahead of that curve is really important, and using generative AI and other tools that are out there, I think are so important. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating about you when I first found out about your team and what you're doing over at InnerAction Media is you had a document on your website called A Culture of Leadership, which is like your culture guide. Can you talk a little bit about what drove you to create something like that, and what was that process like?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, that's something that we're real proud of. And it wasn't something I created. My team created that several years ago. And we live it, and we review that document all the time. I taught on it this morning. I have a Monday meeting every week, and we talk about leadership. And I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, so it's pretty easy for me to kind of do that. But I'm in a group called Convene, and it's a faith-based group of entrepreneurs and business owners. And we had gone through a study a couple years ago on culture means everything. It's basically, you've heard it said before, culture eats strategy for lunch. And so I started thinking about that. And it took me a while to really buy into that concept, right? Because you can have a great culture, but does it really affect the bottom line? Well, I think it's culture and strategy, both. Okay. So we started down this path of what do we stand for? At this point we were probably 10 years into the business, and I was, trying to figure out where we were going. And I have a great team on my, in our building of great people. And so we just started, I had my coach that I work with, his name is Bruce Lane, and he kind of helped us, walk through, we had an offsite retreat for a day, and we just really started the process of what do we stand for? What do we represent as a team? And after months and months of work, the word leadership just kept coming up. And so we just said, that's what we are. We're a culture of leadership. And what that means, in essence, is it starts with the self. So I have to be a good leader of myself. I have to have discipline. I have to have integrity. I have to have, values. And that goes down through every one of our people on our team. Then we talk about leading our family, and the family could be your pet, Chihuahua, all right? But you have to lead that family. Maybe you have 4 kids. You have to be a good leader of your family. You have to lead in the community. So we're all plugged into volunteer boards of directors, a Rotary, and we have a place here called Pace Enterprises. I'm on the board of my board of trustees for my local church, and all these different things that we're all involved in, not just me, but our team. And then we have to lead our clients. In an agency, people don't hire us to just fulfill their orders, take the money and shut up, like I alluded to. We want to lead them. We want to be proactive. We want to bring creative ideas. We're going to be bringing new technology to them. We're going to be bringing and leading the way, right? And the leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. That's our mindset. That's what we do here.
Yeah, I think that's good. One of the things that I've noticed kind of as you're talking is you mentioned that you have a coach, that you had a mentor, that,
Mhm.
and a lot of times when you look at, the president and founder of a company, you think, well, they've got it all together. They're at the top. They know everything. But the fact that even as the president and founder, you're reaching out and getting help and getting leadership. How important is
Yeah.
it for new leaders to realize that, like, just because you got promoted and you're in charge of a bunch of people or a department, that you don't know everything?
Yeah, I have a commitment to lifelong learning. That to me is essential. I am a sponge. I want to learn everything, and so I think that's important. Having a coach, I use this all the time, but Tiger Woods had a swing coach at the peak of his career, because they see something, and a coach doesn't really tell you what to do, but a great coach will ask a question that you just go, whoa, why did you ask me that? I don't want to go down that path, but they ask you because they know where you're in relationship, and they understand what you're trying to do. And you share a lot of intimate things about your business and your family, what you're going through with these people. And they will ask the perfect question, and the answer. You just were afraid to maybe step into it, And so I think that's the value of a coach, is not that they're not telling you what to do. They're asking you, what needs to be true to make this happen? This goal that you have over here, what needs to be true? Or, what do you need to do today to ensure that happens next year? That kind of thing. And I've had, Bruce has been my coach for, I think, 6.5 years now. And as a matter of fact, my number 2 guy, Dylan Sheldon, on my team, he is our vice president of operations. He's also being coached for the last couple of years by my same coach. So I pay for that in order so that we're kind of in alignment. So Bruce knows what's going on big picture, but he can also ask Dylan those same kind of questions. What can you do to support, the mission or the effort, the goals?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think that's really, really good that you're doing that. And, it's just a lot of times when people get to, a position of leadership, whether they got promoted into it or they founded something and built something themselves. At least I found this with myself and with others, that sometimes our ego gets in the way and we don't want to, talk to a coach because we know there's going to be some difficult questions, and we're just like, well, we're doing fine. We're doing fine.
Yeah.
How do you get past that?
Mm-hmm. Well, a part of it is just removing the stubbornness, because I was that way too. I didn't want to admit that I don't have all the answers. I thought I could do everything, on my own. And even in our cohort, the convened cohort, I've got a group our group is all men right now, but there's 8 guys around the table that have gone through similar things that I have, and I've gone through things that they haven't yet gone through. And so having a cohort of people like that in your wheelhouse, so to speak, is really powerful. And being able to talk about opportunities that you might be looking at, or maybe a challenge that you're facing, and to be able to get some real insight, not just, and again, it's a faith-based thing. So you're getting some wisdom from the Bible, and you're getting, different opinions and people who are different stages of their careers and their business. And maybe one guy in our group has, I think it's about a $15 million business. I'm not quite there yet, but I hope to be. But the point is, you're getting perspective, from others. And honestly, I don't know if you can relate to this, John, or not, but, like, I sometimes look around like my inner circle and I say, the people in my inner circle have never been where I want to go. Right? How are they going to help me to get to where I want to go? They've never been there before. It's kind of a simple question, and I don't mean any disrespect to my guys, but
Right.
It's like I sometimes need that extra help to say, okay, you've been there before. Tell me what pitfalls to avoid, things to be looking out for. How do I get that exponential growth? You get to a certain point, and it's we got a pretty good life. We've got a pretty good business, but I want more. I want to see what else we can do. How many more people can we help and serve, right? And so that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of my take on it, the way I look at it.
Yeah, there was a quote, I don't remember who said, I think it was Jim Rohn, but I'm not sure, that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That's right, yeah.
And, in our church has something called e-groups, where we kind of do the same thing, where we can, there's some for different things, whether it's for, fathers or married couples or business leaders, whatever you can kind of pick. But I think having a community that you can kind of get to to where you can share, and hopefully within that group, there's people where you want to go and people who want to be where you're at. And you can kind of offer help to those that where you've already been there, but also, get help from those. Because if you're just if you're only in a group where you're just getting and you're never giving, I feel like that's not a good relationship. You need to be in a place where you can give and get and have that community. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, for I guess the last 13 years or so, I've been in a group called Business Networking International. You may have heard of it, BNI, people call it. And our motto in that group is givers gained, and that's true, man. I mean, think about that. It's better to give than to receive, but sometimes you got to receive too.
Yeah, givers gained. I like that. So switching gears just a little bit, how is it that you've seen AI, since you guys have launched this product and kind of are using generative AI, how have you seen AI kind of change the messages in storytelling, marketing, and media in general?
Yeah. So I use generative AI every day. I use StoryMaker every day. And the thing that I'm most excited about it is, and again, I'm a trained writer. I got a degree in journalism and advertising, so I'm a trained copywriter. But sometimes it's daunting to sit down at a blank computer screen or a blank notebook and start writing. Like, what do I write? Okay, I got the first word. But generative AI, man, it is just so amazing. Like how it can just start, like just explode on the jump start of a creative idea. And to me, that's where I use it most. Even StoryMaker, the results, like if you use it to generate a blog post, for instance, and you've got your keywords in there, you got some tones of voice set up, and with a couple of drop down menus, you've got it ready to go. 30 seconds later, you've got a perfectly, usable piece of content. Most of the time I go in and edit it. I want to change a couple of things, or maybe I'll add something to it, or maybe a pull quote or something of that nature. So it is a great way to just explode the creative process. And to me, that's where, as a writer, as a creative person, as an agency owner, I just love it because it saves so much time and so much energy just getting the creative juices flowing. And to me, that's invaluable.
Mm-hmm. So, selfishly, let me ask: Are you using AI or any generative AI with your podcast?
No. Let me think about that. Well, we may be doing it from the transcription standpoint. Maybe you may be using that, but for me, post-production. But for me, I love having a conversation just like we're doing here. And you're a great podcast host, by the way. Just asking questions and just listening, because I find so much value in that. Our Positively West Virginia podcast, and I'll tell you just real quick about how we started this whole thing. There's so many, in West Virginia, you're in South Carolina, you're in a great market. West Virginia is among the poorest of the states, and we lead the nation in all of the good lists in terms of, like, we are at the top of all the bad lists and all the bottom of all the good lists. Let's put it that way. Okay. And so, everything from health or, diabetes, obesity, opioid addiction. I mean, we just lead the nation in all the bad stuff. And so, but there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in West Virginia. Most of it's, related to business, and entrepreneurship. And, we don't have a lot of Fortune 500 companies. I think we may have one here in West Virginia, and that's even debatable. But, we have a lot of small businesses and a lot of startups, and, technology is coming on the scene. So I like to share the good news, the positive news, Positively West Virginia, and talk about these entrepreneurial journeys and be an encouragement for people, and it's been really amazing I didn't anticipating it, John, being a marketing tool, but it kind of thrust us onto, the statewide scene, if you will. And so it's been great because I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of a born storyteller. I love telling great stories, and especially in marketing. Yeah. And so that's what we do. We do it every week, and we've been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of episodes since 2017, every Thursday.
Nice. Yeah. I started in 2016, so right around the same time.
Yeah.
I think, when you look at what has come out of podcasting, like I started it, number one, to hold myself accountable. I was a new manager at the time, and I kind of sucked. I had a mentor. He told me that, because I had two people quit on the same day, and I was like, oh, well, they go to Charlotte, they make more money, And he's like, no, they're not going to leave for just a little bit more money. He kind of told me I sucked as a manager. It's, you need to be a better leader. You got to stop micromanaging and get out of the way. So I said, all right, well, I want to read these leadership books. I'm going to talk about it with people. And that way my team can listen to me talk about it, and they can hold me accountable and say, hey, you said on the podcast you're doing one-on-ones, but I haven't gotten a one-on-one in a while. Like, what's going on? So that way they can have that opportunity to hold myself accountable. But out of it, like, it's turned into conversations with you, or with, I've had, New York Times bestsellers on, Navy SEALs on, generals, all these kind of really cool people that you get to talk to, whether it be athletes, UFC fighters, whatever. And, just helping, and everybody has the same kind of goal in mind. We want to help people, and how can we do that? How can we get a story out there that will benefit someone somewhere? And I think that's kind of the beauty of podcasts, because you don't have to have a big studio. You don't have to have, millions of dollars and, editors and equipment. You can just start recording and, work along the way. And when it comes to going back to my question about AI, I'm using, just to be, frank and open, podcast Enhance, I think, from Adobe, just to kind of run the audio through, to clean it up a little bit. And my podcast host does transcriptions that it kind of pushes out to Spotify and whoever else, so you can kind of see that. And it's all right. It's not great, but it gets the job done. But I love what you're saying about using it to get a starting point, because a lot of times you don't know where to start. And I'll do that for like agendas for meetings at work, or an email to my boss. I'm like, I need to tell my boss this, and I'll kind of type it into, ChatGPT or something like that. But I need it to sound nice and not sound like it's really bad news, because it may be kind of bad news. It'll give it back to me and say, okay, that's a great start, but that's not accurate. Let me go clean it up and make it accurate and fix that. So I think it's a really, really cool tool. And, who knows where it's going to go.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. And that's what's exciting about it. Like what you just said, who knows where it's going to go? I feel like we're in just such the pioneer stage, and the early adopters, if you will, right? I mean, I bought or logged into ChatGPT like the day that it came out in 2022, and have been a fan ever since. And when I think about the future of it, and that's one of the things. I mean, obviously your audience is composed of a lot of tech people, and so they're probably thinking, yeah, Jim, you're preaching to the choir here. But I feel like, I liken it back to the internet days, the early internet days, especially like the early 1990s, when things were coming on. I was working at a newspaper. This would have been probably back in like 1998 or so, and 97 maybe. And we had our sports editor had called a meeting with the publisher and myself. At the time, I was the advertising director, and I was basically in charge of the website because nobody else wanted to do it. Like update the website. I had a little web development team. They were like, we used to call them the webmaster. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, webmaster days. Yeah,
the webmaster. And he had the password to the website, and I did too. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, this sports guy was in there. This guy had grown up in the newspaper business, and he was like near retirement age. And he said, Matuga, he goes, do you actually think that somebody's going to want to read the newspaper on their computer? You're an idiot. And I was like, well, not only that, I envision a day where they're going to want to read it on their phone. He's like, you're stupid. And he walked out of the room. But that was the mindset, for a lot of people in journalism back then. They just didn't see like what the future was. And I have a couple of buddies, they say, Jim, you've always been fortunate because you were always like before the wave crashed on, newspapers or television or whatever, you were always a step ahead of it, like, how did you manage that? And I was like, well, you could just see it coming, and I didn't want to get crushed, by the closures of newspapers and newsrooms. I saw what was happening in the revenue streams, the advertising revenue drying up. And so that was really what, prompted me to start my business in 2011 was, I saw the writing on the wall big time, and what a time to be alive in the tech age right now with with generative AI. And, it's kind of cool. You mentioned that, are we using AI in the podcast, to clean up audio like you're using? We don't do that, but it's really cool. Most of our business is video production. So I have 5 full-time video producers on our team, and so we have a podcast studio. So I'm recording this, somebody will clean it up or whatever, and they do their thing. We don't use AI for that, but what we do, like for instance, on voiceover nowadays, you can. There used to be voiceover services like live people would read, but now we're using a lot of generative AI from a voice perspective, and
we're using 11 Labs sometimes to do voice.
Yeah, I don't know the companies we're using, because that's it's above my thing. I just pay the bill for it, but the point is that, man, it's indiscernible,
Yeah.
And some of the video stuff that's happening out there is really cool, and we're watching that all the time. We still like to go out and do a lot of first person testimonials, and I feel like that'll be really hard to do with AI, but you never know.
Having that testimonial is so important because it's a real person, and I think people can tell. You can just tell if it's not real. Like. Is that
right now, John? We're right now. Where's this all going, man? Like you said, but it is. It's so fun. Like I always say, man, what a time to be alive. It's just so cool.
Yeah, there's a podcast it's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, and they do a daily news show, and the host was on my show one time, and we've talked some before, and he mentioned one time that now. That used to be like if he messed something up and the editors caught, like he was reading the story and mispronounced somebody or did something wrong, they would call him back in and he would have to record that segment again. They'd put it back in and edit it together. He said now they've got his voice uploaded to 11 Labs, and if he messes up, they'll just go in there and they can literally, like a Word document, just change what he said. If he misspoke something, said the wrong number, they just change the number and it switches it with his voice and puts it back out. He's like, so
amazing.
He's like, eventually they don't even need me. They'll just just upload the transcript and move on.
Exactly. That's cool.
But yeah, it's a crazy time that we live in these days. I did want to talk about one other thing. You mentioned before we started recording that you were working on a new manuscript, and it's a lot about followership when it comes to being a good leader. Can you talk a little bit about that, the take you have on that?
Sure. Yeah. The book right now is titled Humble Influence, The Strength of True Followership. And it basically is it rests on this premise, John, and that is that good followership is a prerequisite to good leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes followership, especially in America, it's oftentimes misunderstood and maybe seen as a secondary role, reserved for people who don't aspire to lead, or maybe they're not good enough to lead. But I think just as everything rises and falls on leadership, I think leadership rises and falls on followership. And so when I look at that, I was like, well, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a procrastinator, I promise you, but I started this book April 17th, 2007. And I was at a leadership conference here in Morgantown, West Virginia, at a thing put on by West Virginia University. And I heard a guy named Jim Kouzes. He's a great leadership author. He was speaking, and I just was overwhelmed with this thought of like, this is great, like great information for leaders. But if the followers don't understand like how to actually implement this stuff, it's not going to work, And maybe other people have had that thought, but I kept thinking, so I started doing research and trying to find books and works and training on how to be an effective follower, and I can't find anything. And still, to this day, everything that's out there is just very minimal, a couple of paragraphs on followership. So I decided to write this book, and it's called Humble Influence. And again, I tried to make it a point to say like things like humility, courage, loyalty, being proactive. These are the kinds of things that are so essential in being an effective follower. But guess what? Once you master those, it primes you to be in a leadership role as well. And so that's basically the gist of the book.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think, it's one of the things that we as leaders need to do is to be able to follow, for starters. But, one of the things that I've always struggled with is empathy. It's really hard for me sometimes to put myself in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
And to be a good leader, I need to know how followers see me. And I also need to know how to follow so I can relate to my followers, but also be a good follower, to my leader, because everybody's got leaders. It doesn't matter where you are in the chain. There's always going to be somebody else. So I think it's a really good concept, and I haven't heard anybody else really talk about it that way. And I think that's going to be very unique. I can't wait till it's finished and to hopefully get a copy and have you back on to talk about it.
18 years later, I'll send you a copy.
Sounds good. Jim, this has been a great conversation. How can people connect with you online and follow you guys and check out Storymaker and the other things that you guys are working on?
Yeah, so my website for our InnerAction Media is InnerActionMedia.com, and that's INNERACTIONMEDIA.com. And of course, Storymaker is StorymakerApp.us, APP, StorymakerApp.us. And my email's on there, my cell phone's on there. You can call the office, you can call my cell phone, send me an email. I'd love to chat with anybody who would like to explore any of these topics that we just discussed.
Awesome. And I'll link that too in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. Again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.